Let me tell you something. I was on vacation with Sam one time, Samuel Jackson. We was in Portofino. We finished dinner one time. We walking back to...
I hear y'all take vacations together on the yacht or something.
Well, we get on the boat with Magic and Cookie. Steve and Marjorie have their own.
I met Bernie years and years ago when I used to have a golf tournament down in Bermuda. And Bernie was the highlight of my comedy night.
Samuel L. Jackson has finally spoken up and cleared the air about Steve Harvey. And what he revealed has people looking at Steve in a completely different way. For years, many fans believed these two were tight, like real friends behind the scenes. There were flashy photos of them relaxing on yachts, laughing together, and vacationing with their wives like they were part of the same celebrity circle. From the outside, it looked like a genuine bond. But according to Samuel, that picture wasn't the truth at all. He made it clear that what people thought was friendship was actually just a coincidence that got blown out of proportion. And once he explained that, people started asking serious questions.
All I can say is what Bernie told me. And he was upset with Steve because he said Steve tried to get him taken off for the Oceans movie he did.
Ocean's 11?
Yeah, and tried to vie for his part after he already got hot.
Why would one of the most respected actors in Hollywood want to keep his distance from Steve Harvey? When you start digging deeper, the story gets even more interesting. People bring up the old talk about stolen jokes, the complicated history involving Bernie Mac, and the criticism Steve faced for staying quiet while his stepdaughter was connected to Diddy. Suddenly, the situation doesn't look so simple anymore. So let's start with the yacht photos, because that moment really opened people's eyes. A few years back, pictures surfaced showing Samuel L. Jackson and his wife LaTanya hanging out with Steve Harvey and Marjorie on a massive luxury yacht in Portofino, Italy. Magic Johnson and his wife were there too, enjoying the sunshine and ocean views. The media instantly ran with it. Headlines everywhere pushed the same story. Friends living the high life together, a celebrity crew on an extravagant getaway, the ultimate squad goals vacation. And people believed it without questioning it.
With him so much.
There was a whole creative kind of chaos sometimes that it was, kind of.
People were saying, oh, that's nice. Samuel and Steve are close like that. The photos made it look like they were longtime friends enjoying a luxury getaway together. But Samuel stepped in and shut that story down fast. He explained that the situation was nothing like what people were imagining. According to Samuel, he and his wife were actually traveling to their own vacation spot when they just happened to run into Steve and Marjorie at the same location. That was it. No big group trip, no planned yacht party, no celebrity vacation squad, just a random moment where their paths crossed. A coincidence, plain and simple. But the internet turned it into something much bigger than it really was. And the way Samuel talked about it made one thing very clear. He didn't like the idea of people thinking he and Steve Harvey were close like that. You could hear it in his tone. He wanted the record straight. He wanted people to understand that there wasn't some deep friendship there and never had been.
A child. I was a stutterer when I was a kid. So, kids made fun of me and they laughed at me and they ridiculed me in a different kind.
Now, on the surface, that might sound like a small detail. Two celebrities run into each other on a yacht. So what, right? But when you really think about it, the interesting part is why Samuel even felt the need to correct it at all. Most celebrities would just ignore the headlines and let people believe whatever story they want. That happens all the time in Hollywood. But Samuel didn't do that. He made it clear he didn't want his name tied to Steve Harvey in that way. That alone made people start asking questions. Because when you start looking at the bigger picture, things begin to make more sense. To understand why Samuel keeps his distance, you also have to look at how different their journeys really were. Samuel L. Jackson's path to success was rough and very real. He grew up without his father and was raised by his mother and grandmother. As a kid, he even struggled with a serious stutter that almost stopped him from chasing his dream of acting. Samuel went to Morehouse College, and while he was there, he didn't just sit in classrooms. He got involved in the civil rights movement, speaking out and standing up during a time when that took serious courage.
You know who we are? We're associates of your business partner, Marcelo.
After college, he moved to New York chasing his dream. But it wasn't glamorous at all. He spent years grinding in theater, taking whatever small jobs he could just to survive and keep the lights on. The struggle was real, and he has never hidden that truth. During those years, he was also fighting a personal battle with addiction, something he has been very open about in interviews. Things got so bad that he eventually hit rock bottom. But instead of staying there, Samuel fought his way back. Getting clean was only the first step. Even after turning his life around, it still took years before Hollywood even started to recognize his name. Director Spike Lee gave him a real opportunity with Do the Right Thing and later Jungle Fever. Those roles helped people notice his talent, but he still wasn't a household name yet. That didn't happen until Pulp Fiction, and by that time, Samuel L. Jackson was already in his mid-40s.
Steve Harvey telling people he used to be homeless. That's my story. That's not his story. Steve Harvey wasn't never homeless. When Mark Curry was touring with him 25 years ago, he was making $3,000 a show in.
Think about that for a second. Decades of struggle, auditions, small roles, rejection, and persistence before the world finally saw what he could do. So we're talking about someone who spent more than 20 years grinding, failing, getting back up, and earning every step forward. Nothing about his journey was handed to him. Nothing about it felt manufactured. Now, when people compare that path to Steve Harvey's early story, some say things don't line up the same way. Steve has talked for years about being homeless, saying he slept in his car for 3 straight years, washed up in gas station bathrooms, and survived on vending machine food. That story became a huge part of his image. It showed up in his books, his motivational speeches, and countless interviews. It made him relatable and inspiring, and it turned into a powerful comeback story that audiences loved hearing again and again.
And then he gets this high top fade, making all black men think he got the best lineup in the business. And it's a man unit. Because Cat Williams said he was actually bald, and that was a
But Cat Williams and several comedians who were actually around during that time tell a very different story. According to them, the situation wasn't as dramatic as the version people have heard for years. They've said Steve wasn't completely on his own the way the story suggests. From their perspective, he still had places to stay, family connections, and people around him who were willing to help when things got rough. Because of that, some comedians believe the homeless narrative may have been stretched a bit to create a stronger image. A powerful comeback story connects with audiences, and it can turn someone into a motivational figure overnight. That version of events helped build Steve's brand through books, speeches, and interviews. Cat Williams also raised another issue during a conversation on Club Shay Shay. He questioned Steve's explanation for stepping away from stand-up comedy. Steve has often said he stopped performing because he was busy with television, claiming he had 7 shows and simply didn't need to tour anymore.
And he did all my Halloween material one Halloween. I'm watching that. Somebody called me and said, man, homeboy doing your material. So he did my whole Halloween run. And I know he didn't think of it. This is true stuff that really happened.
But Cat pushed back on that story hard. According to Cat, the timeline doesn't match. He said, "You didn't have those 7 shows when you stopped. You stopped because I beat you." He was referring to the Championship of Stand-Up Comedy in Detroit, a huge event with around 10,000 people in the audience. Cat claims he faced Steve in that competition and completely outperformed him on stage. During that performance, Cat says he even joked about the fact that Steve had been wearing a wig, turning it into part of the act right in front of the crowd. The moment reportedly shocked the audience and quickly became the talk of the comedy scene. Not long after that period, Steve eventually dropped the wig and embraced the bald look that everyone recognizes today. Back then, Steve was still hiding behind that look, and Cat Williams basically pulled the curtain wide open in front of the entire city. That moment stuck with a lot of people in the comedy scene. So when you place these 2 life stories side by side, it becomes easier to understand why someone like Samuel L. Jackson might feel a certain way about the situation.
Let me tell you something. I was on vacation with Sam one time, Samuel Jackson. We was in Portofino. We had finished dinner one time. We walking back to...
Samuel built his reputation on raw authenticity. His journey was messy, difficult, and very real. He talked openly about growing up without his father, dealing with addiction, struggling for decades, and spending years as a talented actor that almost nobody recognized. For a long time, he was just another performer trying to survive in New York theater before the world finally caught up to his talent. Every step of his success came after years of setbacks and hard lessons. Meanwhile, critics in the comedy world have claimed Steve's path was built differently. Some industry voices say parts of his public story were exaggerated, and others have accused him of using material that didn't originally belong to him. And once you step into that conversation, things start to get a lot more intense. Because when comedians talk about Steve Harvey behind closed doors, the topic that comes up again and again isn't the wig story or even the debate about his early struggles. The biggest issue people mention is joke stealing. Several comedians have publicly claimed that Steve used their material as his own. One of the most talked about examples involves comedian Mark Curry.
I hear y'all take vacations together on the yacht or something.
Well, we get on the boat with Magic and Cookie. Steve and Marjorie have their own.
If that name sounds familiar, he's the star from Hangin' with Mr. Cooper. Mark has been speaking about this for years, saying Steve not only used his jokes, but also tried to copy his whole comedic style and identity. And according to Mark, this wasn't just a random complaint or someone being bitter about old competition. And the reason this situation keeps coming up is because people say there's actual footage connected to it. Mark Curry had a comedy bit back in 1999 where he talked about growing up poor and having to wear a cardboard box as a Halloween costume because his family couldn't afford a real one. The joke worked because it came from a real memory from his childhood, something personal that audiences connected with right away. Years later, viewers noticed something surprising. Steve Harvey told a very similar story on his talk show, presenting it like it was his own childhood experience. According to fans who compared the clips, the setup sounded almost identical. The punchline landed the same way, and even the emotional rhythm of the story felt familiar.
I met Bernie years and years ago when I used to have a golf tournament down in Bermuda. And Bernie was the highlight of my comedy night.
The only major difference people pointed out was that the story was now framed as if it happened to Steve's family instead of Mark's. Once those clips started circulating online, fans began placing them side by side. The comparisons quickly spread across the internet, and a lot of viewers said the similarities were hard to ignore. That's when the situation started getting serious. Mark eventually addressed the issue publicly during the Def Comedy Jam 25 special in 2017. There's video of that moment too. While Dave Chappelle was performing on stage, Mark walked over to where Steve was sitting in the crowd. People watching closely noticed Steve's expression change instantly, almost like he realized the confrontation might be coming. Later on, Mark talked more about it during an interview on Willie D's podcast. According to him, the issue wasn't just about a single joke. He claimed Steve had been copying more than that. Mark said Steve wanted to mirror his entire style. In his words, Steve copied material, copied the concept of his show, and even created the Steve Harvey Show in a way that felt similar to Hangin' with Mr. Cooper. From Mark's perspective, it looked like someone trying to recreate what he had already built. When Steve was asked about these accusations, his response was fairly brief. He brushed the situation aside and said, "I haven't done stand-up since 2015, and I don't know what Mark Curry is talking about." Steve's response to the accusations didn't sit well with everyone. At one point, he dismissed the situation by saying, "He needs to grow up." But by then, the clips were already circulating online, and people had already started comparing them for themselves. Once something like that spreads across the internet, it becomes almost impossible to ignore. The conversation grew even louder when actress Angela Means, known for playing Felicia in Friday, spoke up and supported Mark Curry's claims. She suggested that Steve sometimes carried himself like he was the king of comedy and could take material from whoever he wanted without facing consequences. That statement added even more heat to the debate. And according to Cat Williams, the issue of joke borrowing didn't stop there. During an appearance on Club Shay Shay, Cat claimed that Cedric the Entertainer, one of Steve Harvey's closest friends, used one of Cat's well-known closing jokes in his own act. Cat explained that Cedric once came to the Comedy Store, sat in the audience, and watched him perform the bit live. After the show, Cedric reportedly walked up to him and praised the joke. But Cat says that a couple of years later, he heard a very familiar routine. According to him, Cedric performed a version of that same joke during the Kings of Comedy era, with only one noticeable change. In Cat's version, the joke involved a car, while in Cedric's version, the vehicle had been swapped out for a spaceship. Aside from that, Cat claimed the structure and punchline sounded nearly identical. So now you've got multiple stories floating around the comedy world. Mark Curry accusing Steve Harvey of using his material, Cat Williams accusing Cedric the Entertainer of doing something similar, and all of them tied to the same legendary group that branded themselves as the original kings of comedy. They toured together, released a hugely successful film, and built an entire legacy around that name. But many fans still ask one interesting question: the comedian who often stole the show night after night during that era. The one audiences say had the crowd roaring the loudest. Who was that really? And the comedian many fans say truly dominated that era was Bernie Mac. Night after night, people remember Bernie walking on stage and completely owning the room. His energy was loud, fearless, and unforgettable. But according to some voices in the comedy world, what happened behind the scenes during that time is where things start to look a lot darker. Cat Williams claimed that Steve Harvey and Cedric the Entertainer weren't just dealing with accusations about borrowed jokes. He suggested there was also tension involving Bernie Mac that most fans never saw. During an appearance on Club Shay Shay, Cat shared his belief that jealousy may have played a role behind the curtain. According to Cat, Bernie had something rare that Hollywood quickly noticed. He had the ability to make audiences laugh 1 minute and hit them with real emotion the next. That kind of talent opened doors for him beyond stand-up comedy. Movie roles started coming his way, and the industry began viewing him as more than just a comedian. Cat suggested that this shift created frustration for some people around him. In his view, Steve Harvey wanted that same crossover success in Hollywood. He wanted those acting opportunities, but the big roles weren't arriving for him in the same way they were for Bernie. One example Cat mentioned was the film Ocean's 11. Bernie Mac landed a role in the movie alongside huge stars like Brad Pitt and George Clooney. According to Cat's claim, Steve allegedly approached people connected to the project and offered to take the role for less money. The idea, he suggested, was to step into the part Bernie had already secured. Cat said the producers declined the offer and stayed with Bernie. He also claimed that the situation eventually made its way back to Bernie himself, which only added more tension behind the scenes. You can imagine how upsetting that must have been for Bernie. Finding out that someone you're touring with, someone you're supposed to share a brotherhood with through the Kings of Comedy, might have been trying to take a major role from you behind the scenes. From Bernie's perspective, it would feel like someone trying to grab an opportunity right off your plate by offering to do the job for less money. DJ Ed Lover later spoke about the situation and said Bernie himself told him that Steve had attempted to take the Ocean's 11 role. That's why the story keeps resurfacing. It's not just something Cat Williams said on a podcast. According to Ed Lover, the information came directly from Bernie while he was still alive. When multiple people repeat the same story, it naturally gets people talking. Cat also made another claim about what happened during the Kings of Comedy tour itself. According to him, when the lineup for the show was first being organized, Steve Harvey and Cedric the Entertainer wanted Steve to close the show. In stand-up comedy, the closing spot is the headline position. That's the performer who leaves the strongest final impression and is often seen as the main star of the night. So the plan, Cat said, was to have Bernie Mac open the show, basically warming up the crowd before Steve came out later. But once producers started reviewing the performances, something unexpected happened. When they watched the footage back, Bernie's set stood out immediately. His performance was so powerful, so funny, and so electric that it completely changed the order of the show. Producers reportedly decided to flip the lineup and move Bernie to the final slot instead. That meant Bernie would now close the show, the most important position on the stage. And many fans say that once Bernie stepped into that final spot, he completely stole the show every single night. That shift in the spotlight reportedly created tension behind the scenes, especially since the original plan had been very different. But the part that still leaves many people uneasy is what happened after Bernie Mac sadly passed away in 2008. That's when even more questions started to surface. After Bernie Mac passed away in 2008, something else caught people's attention. Suddenly, many of the same comedians who were rumored to have tension with him behind the scenes began speaking publicly about how much they loved him. They talked about how great he was, how much they respected him, and how deeply they missed him. To a lot of fans, that shift felt a little strange. And this is where the story circles back to Samuel L. Jackson, because Samuel was actually close with Bernie Mac. They worked in similar circles, shared mutual respect, and understood each other as performers. Bernie wasn't just another comedian to Samuel. He was someone whose talent and work ethic were widely admired. So when someone like Samuel, who values loyalty and authenticity, hears stories about people possibly working against Bernie behind the scenes, it naturally changes how he sees things. Bernie Mac was widely considered one of the strongest performers in that entire comedy group. Many fans say he consistently stole the show with his energy and stage presence. That's why some people believe Samuel's distance from Steve Harvey isn't about small celebrity drama or those yacht photos from years ago. For Samuel, supporters say it comes down to character and how people treat others in the industry. When respect and loyalty are important to you, situations like that can leave a lasting impression. And then there's another situation that added even more public attention: the discussion around Lori Harvey. This is where some viewers say the conversation around Steve became even more complicated. For years, Steve built a huge part of his brand on giving relationship advice and talking about how men and women should behave. His books, speeches, and shows positioned him as someone who understood relationships and life choices. So when Lori Harvey began appearing publicly with music mogul Diddy around 2019, it quickly became headline news. The reason people paid so much attention was because Lori had previously been linked to Diddy's son, Justin. When the story shifted from the son to the father, the internet exploded with reactions and questions almost overnight. Take a second and really think about that situation. Lori Harvey went from dating Diddy's son to being romantically linked to Diddy himself. The internet exploded with reactions because the age gap was huge, and the connection between father and son made the whole situation feel even more surprising to a lot of people. At the time, the two weren't trying to keep things quiet either. Photos of them together started popping up everywhere. They were seen in Italy, Mexico, New York, Atlanta, traveling, dining out, and spending time together in public. It quickly became one of those celebrity stories that people couldn't stop talking about. And in some of those photos, Steve Harvey was actually sitting right there at the dinner table with them. Cameras captured moments where everyone looked relaxed, smiling, and enjoying the evening like everything was completely normal. For some viewers, that raised a lot of eyebrows. People were wondering how Steve, who built such a strong brand around family values and relationship advice, felt about the situation. At the time, though, Steve didn't publicly comment much about it. The story eventually faded from the headlines, and people moved on to the next big celebrity topic. But years later, when new controversies involving Diddy began making news, some fans started looking back at those old photos again with a very different perspective. And this is where some industry voices say Samuel L. Jackson's reaction becomes easier to understand. Samuel has been married to his wife, LaTanya Richardson Jackson, for more than 4 decades. Their relationship is often pointed to as one of the most stable and respected marriages in Hollywood. For Samuel, loyalty and protecting your family are things he has lived out for years, not just ideas you talk about on television. Because of that, some people believe watching situations like that unfold, while Steve continued presenting himself as a relationship expert on TV, didn't sit right with him. Supporters say that may be why Samuel wanted to make one thing crystal clear. He didn't want people assuming he and Steve Harvey were close friends. That yacht clarification suddenly makes a lot more sense when you look at it through that lens. It wasn't just about correcting vacation photos or clearing up a small misunderstanding. For Samuel, it was about drawing a line and protecting his own reputation. In other words, the message seemed simple. Don't mix our names together, because we're not the same. When people stack everything side by side, the comedy controversies, the stories involving Bernie Mac, and the public situations that sparked debate online, you can see why this conversation keeps resurfacing again and again. Now, the big question is, what do you think about all of it?